Hey, so today we're reacting to Mutaha, Some Ordinary Gamers. On his video, Xbox has hit rock bottom. Now, I've been told this is an actually really good video, and people would like my take on what's being said. So, I'm going to give it its time, so you probably will be watching this maybe Friday. Members will probably get it a little earlier, but you'll probably see this on Friday because I don't like making, reacting to content that is day one. So let's get on with the video.
Ooh, Xbox hits rock bottom. Oh boy, you don't want to read that stuff if you're a Team Green fan. Now, before we start off with this, I'm not here to take cheap shots at Microsoft. You know, and I know that when it comes to Microsoft Windows, anytime I can get a big, giant chance above it, I take it. But I'm a gamer and I love playing video games, and generally speaking, I also love competition, okay?
For those that don't know, he's a very avid Linux user. But, he's also, I believe he's going to be fair in this video, at least based on what I've been hearing.
You don't have any competition in the space. Sony gets to be Sony and release remasters of games that don't need to be remastered.
I mean, there is literally no difference between them. This literally was a case, I mean, very little that you can see. But, there's literally was a case of Ben Studios, you've lost all that money. Do a remaster so we can recoup some of that money.
Recently, I saw that they're remastering Days Gone, which I saw the before and after comparison shot of that game. I struggle to find the difference, okay? But let it be known that, yes, they will be selling this game for full price, and if you just own it, you can upgrade for like $10. I know. But I have to ask a question. Do games that are already looking good need a remaster? It really allows a company like Sony to get pretty complacent, especially when they realize they have no competition. Now, Xbox has actually...
And that's a huge problem, right? And this is why you're seeing more and more remasters and the lack of the first-party cadency. I mean, people are saying, look at the number of games that they've released and whatnot, but I just find the quality of the games that they had in the same time frame during the PS4 days was just better. Overall was better. And even though you're not just looking at the exclusives, the overall quality of the games around it with the third parties that bolstered that collection was also better.
Actually not been apparently selling that well. In the year of 2024, in the United States alone, they sold 2.7 million units.
So that's more than the 2 million that Take-Two said, right? So does that mean that Take-Two were lying? Does this mean every PS fan under the sun that ran around with 2 million now became frauds and jokes? Because that's in the US. The rest of the world, they sold probably around another 2 million, 1.5 to 2 million. So they sold over 4 million units, which isn't a lot, mind you, but, it's still not the 2 million. It goes completely against what the NPD results were showing.
That means it is by far the worst performance in actual history of the system. And of course, when you look at places like Europe, they've sold 290,000 units. And obviously in Japan, I can assure you that number maybe just drops into the thousands. Actually, the reason Japan is going to be a bit lower, not that much, it's a bit of a hyperbole, is that the actual console market in Japan is conveniently shrinking as the PC market is rising, and of course you've also got mobile gaming as well. So yeah, PC gaming is kind of becoming a almost nirvana in the country, but that's a whole separate video. But you might be like, well, Muta, why is Xbox such a failure of a platform when it comes to selling? And honestly, when you compare it to like their actual direct competitor, PlayStation, these guys are shipping 20 million units apparently in 2024. So why is it that obviously PlayStation is selling, Nintendo is selling, but Xbox hardware doesn't sell? And the simple reasoning beyond it is that PlayStation produces, obviously, exclusive games, games that are specifically on that system, even though the PlayStation 5, when you look at the actual exclusives, there's not really a whole heck of a lot on there that you...
I mean, there's only 3 at the moment. There's Demon's Souls, there's GT7, and there's one more I keep forgetting. But there's one more game that's on there. So realistically speaking, when it comes to exclusives, most of them have gone to PC. So they're no longer exclusive. And even now, you're seeing games that are coming, they're using the term console exclusive. And just until like a couple weeks ago, they were still saying that this was a term coined by Microsoft. It's a made up word, it doesn't exist. A game is either exclusive or it's not. And but it's really amusing now to see PlayStation fans actually now adopt it now that it suits their narrative.
You can't just get on PC anyways. But it's got some exclusivity. And it's got brand power. Nintendo, same thing. There's plenty of exclusive games that, without emulation, you pretty much have to buy a Nintendo platform for.
And exclusives sell consoles. That's it. There's no two ways about it. If Doom was exclusive on Xbox, people would be buying Xboxes. It's really that simple. Exclusives sell consoles. There's no real way to sugarcoat that.
When it comes to Xbox, right? Any game that's released on Xbox at all obviously has a PC port as well. Meaning that you don't need to buy an Xbox system. If you wanted to play a game like Avowed, you can buy it for $90 on Steam and have fun. If you want to play Forza Horizon 5, it's on PC. Sea of Thieves on PC. Halo, the whole franchise, save for Halo 5, is on PC. And of course, I think this is obviously a good thing, right? Obviously, the more places anybody can play a video game, there is no concern. In fact, on Steam alone, Xbox Game Studios is shipping 70 games. Games that, for the most part, also work on Linux through the Steam Deck or natively. So, Microsoft doesn't really care where you buy stuff. And there's been rumors...
At least not anymore. They did in the past. But now not so much.
Apparently that Halo is apparently coming to the PlayStation 5. If you told teenager Mudahar that Halo 3, the game that he was playing on his Xbox 360, could one day run on a PlayStation with the actual command prompts, and I'm not talking about when I ran Halo on my PlayStation 4 through Linux and a modified system. No, I'm talking natively. Like, you go to the store, you buy a copy, you put it in your PlayStation, and lo and behold, Bob's your uncle, you're playing Master Chief on Sony's console. I almost said Sony for crying out loud, okay? So that shows you where my brain rot has gone to. But the reality of it is obviously this is not Microsoft necessarily bowing out. They're a far larger company than actually their competitors in the gaming space.
It's not so much them bowing out, but at the same time, they also are struggling to compete with Sony. And even if you want to add Nintendo into it, with Nintendo, something just isn't working when it comes to Microsoft. Even now that they've got their games, Avowed has just come out. I spent like an hour on it yesterday, or maybe an hour and a half, and it's really good. The game looks absolutely beautiful, but I'm seeing on social media already people just trashing it because it's on Xbox and not on PlayStation. The moment it comes to PlayStation, they're going to be ramping and raving about it. Hellblade 2 is another one. It was a good game. It pretty much was exactly as they described it on the tin. It's very, very different to what the first game was, but they told you that it's not going to be a game in that same vein, but people still went in there thinking it was, and they criticized it to hell. But for some reason, Xbox as a brand just isn't hitting, whether it's because of the reputation of Microsoft, or maybe just with the way the games are coming out. Even with the launch of the Series X, Halo not landing was a colossal failure. It needed to be there day one, and it wasn't. There's lots that can be talked about with Xbox as a brand as to why it's not as successful as it could be. But one thing or another, it's just not hitting. Especially outside of America. In Europe, it's the sales numbers are absolutely dismal. So pivoting to software was always going to be the logical direction.
And there was actually a quote by Phil Spencer, the guy that is the director of Xbox, and I thought it was a pretty interesting quote. So I want you to listen to it. It's from the Xbox Era podcast. So just take a quick listen.
Franchises there. I'm not trying to move them all over to Xbox. Like, anymore, we're all so invested in where our games are. Let's just allow more people to play. And yes, the 70% that we make on games on other platforms is helpful. to us being able to build great portfolios like we showed at Dev Direct. And I hope this will continue to show through the rest of the year.
So what he's basically said over here is, yo, we don't sell enough hardware, okay? So if you're going to spend millions of dollars making video games, you want to make sure that millions of people are able to buy said video game. So instead of releasing it on their Xbox hardware that doesn't sell well, let's also sell it on PlayStation. Let's sell it on Nintendo. Let's sell it on fucking Windows. Hell, if these people could find a way to sell it on Mac, they probably would too.
Okay, let's be realistic. Mac is going a bit too far now, Mutar. Now, I know you like Linux, and, Mac was built on, a form of Linux, but I think Mac is just... I think that's just going a bit too far. Even this one. If you said something like, I don't know, Google Stadia or Ouya, even an Etch-a-Sketch, I'd say okay. But a Mac, I think you're starting to push it there.
Microsoft doesn't care as long as people purchase a game and a sale is made. It doesn't matter where you're playing the game. As long as you're in the Xbox ecosystem, it is what it is.
One other point that he did make, which I think is absolutely valid, and people still to this day do not agree that this is true, but if Game Pass had sold 100 million subscriptions and the console itself was in the 70, 80 million right now, you would not see them putting those games on other platforms. You absolutely would not. This I genuinely believe. You would not see it. It just wouldn't be happening. But the fact that they haven't hit those numbers and Game Pass isn't growing at the expedited rate that they wanted it to, and the console market really, for them at least, just isn't growing, that's why they've decided that they are going to go down this way, get that extra revenue, and I'm hoping he does cover that 70%. I'm not sure if he actually will. That's probably for another video, but that 70% is great until you start, talking about the development cost, the marketing cost, the publishing cost. There's a lot of costs that go into building a video game. So where Sony is sitting there, or Nintendo is sitting there, or Steam is sitting there and enjoying that 30% for doing absolutely nothing, just enjoying free money coming their way, Microsoft needs to recover the development cost, the marketing cost, the publishing cost, and every other cost that comes with building that game. And then they'll start making profit, and then they actually start to enjoy that 70%. They don't enjoy it until they've broken even. And I don't know if he's going to cover that in this video, but I'd love to hear his thoughts on that at the very least. So that 70%, 30% talk that people have, I saw Xbox Zero cover it as well. I think they totally missed the point, and they could have reworded that question way more better, but they kind of handed it to Phil on a plate, and he took it and chewed it up and gave it back to them, because that question could have got ugly real quick.
So a lot of people have been looking at this as doom and gloom, but they've conveniently ignored that things like Game Pass are actually picking up, which, again, is all Microsoft cares about. As long as you're giving them the dollars a month in that subscription service, that's really the key importance to the company. Microsoft is a software company first and foremost. Hardware is always usually the second banana. Microsoft has always released their software through OEMs, and generally when they have their own hardware, it is stuff like the Xbox. It's stuff like the Surface tablets. It's stuff like Surface laptops.
Which, the Surface laptops have historically had problems. My brother's got a Surface laptop that the work gave him, and he's just had nothing but problems. The tablets didn't really do well. You've got the Windows Phone, which wasn't really supported. It's almost like Google is running Microsoft.
So I have an actual method. I have a way that I think Microsoft could really come back with selling Xboxes.
I know he's going to go into Steam. He has to. There's literally nothing out there that he can say that, yeah, I'm going to go with Steam, because at this point, right? At this point, if you don't have exclusives, you need to have some form of USP to sell the console. The hardcore gamers will probably buy it, right? But the hardcore gamers are so small today that those numbers are not enough. You need to look at the bigger audience, and you need to attract those people. And how can you do that? And so the number one way is Steam. But how can you actually get this to work on an Xbox OS? It's difficult. So as you know, I've been discussing this for a long time. In my community, the next Xbox will have like a hybrid Windows platform on there, or maybe you'll have like a dual boot Windows on there. You'll have Windows and you'll have Xbox OS, and you can switch between the two on the fly. Or, maybe do something like the Steam Deck where you can partition the drive. It does everything for you. At the end of the day, we have scripts today that can pretty much install Windows with one button press, right? The script will do everything you need it to do. It's the whole point of automation. You run the script, and the script will go through every single process that it needs to until it's finished installing, and give you a dual boot screen or the option, I don't know. But it's definitely possible. Obviously, that opens up the console for piracy and stuff, but at this point, I don't think they really care. And I think that's probably what he's going to get into, but let's see. And I do apologize for pausing it at this point. Yeah.
And it's a gimmick that I've talked about literally at the launch of the system, and Microsoft has, for some reason, not actually picked up on it. So let's get into the technical weeds for a minute, okay? Let's talk about operating systems. Every console has it. PlayStation has its Orbis OS, the interface you see when you're logging into your PlayStation. You pick a game, and, it is what it is. Nintendo has Horizon on the Switch, which is its basic infrastructure, and Xbox has its own interface. In fact,
OS.
Xbox's operating system is literally just Windows. So if you
In particular, it's actually Windows 10.
look at the Xbox system operating system right here, the current operating system actually runs on something known as Hyper-V. Now, if you don't know what Hyper-V is Microsoft's hypervisor. So remember those videos where I literally put together a virtual machine gaming system? Now, in my Linux system, this is two virtual machines that I have, Windows 11 and the Windows 11 clone. Now, if I open up Windows 11, and I have to make sure that I don't actually run this, otherwise I'd ruin the recording of this video, you can see that inside this virtual machine, I'm actually passing through my keyboards, my mice. In fact, I'm even passing through my graphics card. So inside this virtual machine, it will fire up Windows 11 running in a machine within Linux. And it passes my graphic card. By all intents and purposes, this feels and runs like a native installation of Windows. Now, the reason I'm going through this technical expertise is obviously, Microsoft does the same thing for the Xbox. When you fire up the Xbox interface, you are effectively looking at a Hyper-V system. And every single application, every single game that you see on your Xbox will spin up its own virtual machine, containing the game files, and it will basically allow the actual Xbox hardware to partition its resources, its graphical allocation, its, CPU stuff between virtual machines. It creates a cute sandbox.
That actually makes a lot of sense. On a more technical level, I never really thought about it that way, but on a technical level, that actually makes so much more sense in a weird and wonderful way. I never really looked at it in that way. Now, I've known about Hyper-V for a long time, but I never really put two and two together because of, of what Hyper-V is. But them it's not booting up the game just by default. It actually makes a lot more sense, and my brain hurts right now from not really realizing this.
So if you find something naughty in a video game, it won't be used to necessarily break the security of the console. And obviously, Hyper-V security has a lot of corporate backing into it. Microsoft.
This also goes into now my theory about, if you did do something like this, it could cause security issues. Well, with Hyper-V, that kind of makes that redundant, right? So my theory, which I'm assuming he's going to be talking about, is becoming more and more correct. We'll see in a minute.
Microsoft has absolutely put tons of resources into this alone, which is why the Xbox is, for the most part, as far as I know, a pretty unhackable system. So obviously, throughout all of this situation, ladies and gentlemen, where am I getting along with this? Well, Microsoft also sells one of the most entrenched operating systems in the world, Windows 10 and Windows 11. And I really have not understood why Xbox has not decided to allow users to have a partition of Windows 11 installed and turning the Xbox effectively into
Called it. I called it. This is basically what I've been saying for ages. I've been saying this in my streams. I've been saying this in videos. I do not understand why they don't do it. They can do it with the current system. Even if they did it now, they would just get a bump in sales just by people wanting to mess around and have the best of both worlds in a small, compact form box. At the end of the day, the Xbox, in my opinion, if they did that, it's got a good CPU, it's got 16 gigabytes of RAM, it's got a good GPU. For the price that you pay for it at £450, it definitely punches above its weight. If you were to go and build a PC with those specs, you'd be paying more money. So it could easily filter itself into that kind of market, into that kind of that niche, and it would find its market there. I think, I agree with him. I don't understand why they haven't done this, especially considering this is kind of the approach that they want to go down. I guess there's been some legal reasons with apps and stuff working on there, but technically it's Windows, right? So it won't even matter. The important thing is getting the user interface to work either way.
into a pretty functional gaming PC. So I talked about this stuff years ago, but I feel like the best way to kind of explain this is going back to Sony. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, there was something known as Other OS back in the days of the PlayStation 3. Now, recently, I picked up a PlayStation 3 backwards compatible. We're talking original PS2 backwards compatible PlayStation 3. I found it, spent a good chunk of money on it, repaired it myself, cleaned it out, changed out the drives, and now it's one of my most used consoles, running super smooth, and allows me to play PlayStation 2 games without emulating them. It runs it natively on the drive, and of course, running my PS3 stuff. But
what people don't know is that the original PS3, or some people might not know, actually had the Emotion Engine built into it, which is cool. It's why I imported my PS3 from the US at launch, because most of my games were imported from the US, and I was playing it on my modded PS2. Obviously, that wouldn't work on the PS3 if I bought it in the UK, and with the PS3 being not region locked, it made perfect sense for me to do that. But the George Foreman PS3 the original one was awesome, especially with its access to other OS, which was Linux based, which is sadly how people got around to pirating the PS3. So they ended up removing it in the end.
there was one feature back in the day of the original PlayStation called Other OS, which allowed PlayStation 3 to run Linux on the actual system. So back in the day, you could literally divide up the actual hard drive of the PlayStation 3, and you could install Linux, a customized version, for the Cell Broadband PlayStation 3. And you could basically turn your PS3 into an actual desktop. So you could browse the web, check your emails, use actual desktop applications for the most part. Gaming wasn't all the way there because there were some limitations on the actual GPU being fed into it. Now, while this feature was kind of cool, what was super interesting was...
In fact, Sony pretty much made sure that they blocked the GPU from actually accessing Linux. I don't know if eventually people found a way around it, but originally they basically made it so you couldn't access the GPU core through other OS.
Was because Sony had introduced the ability to run Linux, you had organizations like the United States Air Force purchasing 1,760 of these things to build a supercomputer. And now people say piracy is probably one of the reasons this got shut down, but I would go so far and say that it's probably the fact that you had organizations like the U.S. Air Force purchasing, PlayStation systems that were sold at a cost from Sony, and obviously it wasn't something that Sony was okay with. They could have sold a data center version, but however they didn't. And of course, you go down the road over here, ladies and gentlemen, and of course you can see that even when it came to prior versions of the actual PlayStation, like the PS2 and its Linux situation, it was apparently a way for Sony to try and get some form of a tax dodge by, again, changing the specification of their system. Now,
I mean, I don't dispute that at all. But I still believe that the piracy side of things, because people did manage to pirate games on there, was the core reason why Sony removed it. Because, you can't give nice things to people without them exploiting it. It's the same with everything. People just can't have nice things. It has to be exploited, and it has to be broken down, and it has to be jailbroken, because that's just the world we live in. And when that happens, they take those nice things away from you.
Since Sony removed Other OS, what's also interesting about this is because Other OS was gone, it was also advertised. And I believe if you, were European, and in fact, if you were American, there was a, class action lawsuit which entitled users to around $84, $60 US, basically of getting their money back from Sony. So basically, you got a free game when Sony removed a actual, key feature from their system. Maybe not a lot of people used it, but enough to actually somewhat hurt Sony a bit financially and put some money back in the players' pockets. Now, the problem is Sony was advertising it so openly, right? Like literally, if you bought a PlayStation 3, you had literally all avenues of storage access. I mean, for crying out loud, if you have the original PlayStation 3, you can stick like CF cards, all forms of SD cards. I mean, this was a multimedia monster. I mean, we're talking the original Blu-ray players for people, media servers, everything up the wall.
The PS3 was like £600, I think, if I remember correctly, but it had a lot going for it. The Blu-ray player on its own, one of the first Blu-ray players, was its big selling point, just like the DVD was the selling point for the PS2. It was like the cheapest DVD player you could get at the time. The PS3, in general, more or less, was like the cheapest Blu-ray player you could get. It didn't, it struggled to sell off with that at launch, but they managed to turn it around as Blu-ray players didn't go down in price, and the PS3 was definitely a good alternative for that. So it definitely had a lot riding on it and a lot going for it. But that price point was always going to make it difficult to shift.
Wazoo. And when it came to Other OS, this was a serious feature, right? Like, imagine if you were going to the store, you could buy an Xbox 360 and just play games, or you could buy a PlayStation 3 and play those video games, as well as, install Linux and use the device as a straight-up computer. So while that feature was removed, recently with a hacked PlayStation 3, I decided to install Other OS++. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what Other OS++ is, effectively the modding community on the PlayStation 3, after Other OS was removed, which caused Sony to get sued to the point where they actually had to pay, in a class action lawsuit, anybody that effectively got lied to in the advertising. I mean, you can't just advertise a feature and take it away. Effectively using Other OS++, if you have a modified PlayStation right now, you can install versions of Linux right now and basically get a functional desktop. Now, nowadays you can't really do much with it. It's not like PS4 Linux where you can use things like Proton and play Steam games on an actual PS4 modded. It's more of a novelty these days than it is actually something that is functional. But it shows.
I didn't know you could do that on the PS4. I mean, I heard the rumors of getting Proton to work, but I didn't realize it actually worked well. I'm going to guess it's going to be obviously for like the really old games. Nothing like it in the last 10 years would run on it. But still, it's quite impressive that people were doing that. I heard the rumors, but I never really tried it.
You know what the future of consoles could really be. Nowadays, a lot of these gaming consoles are effectively x86, 64-based devices, so you're basically just...
Pretty much, like these devices are PCs, right? You've got the CPU, which might be a custom AMD, but it's still a Zen 2 CPU. The GPU is an RDNA 2 GPU. They're just watered down. They use the same RAM that you're used to every day. They use the same hard drives that you use today. It's all PCI. I mean, they're Gen 4, but I think you've got PCI 5 now, which is even faster. But you get the point. They're just, PCs. They are PCs.
Just buying a fucking gaming computer with a customized operating system on top of it. When you buy a PlayStation 5, it is, for the most part, a actual standard gaming PC, running FreeBSD operating systems, a customized version that is just effectively a PC. So when you buy an Xbox Series X or an S, You're basically buying a PC that is running a customized version of Windows. So the thing that I pose, obviously, that I really think would give Xbox a super leading advantage, because Xbox already kind of succeeds, in my opinion, with the software. The games typically come with free upgrades. That game that Sony's releasing, Days Gone Remastered, Xbox already does pretty much for free. I remember the launch of the Xbox Series systems, a lot of games.
And this is something like I know a lot of people are going to be saying, Xbox, and people take it for granted, but there's a lot of work that goes into these upgrades and remasters, and you know, there are so many games that actually a lot of work goes into. Recently, I went and bought like the Final Fantasy 13 collection. Yep, I'm plugging it in there, and you know, when you actually plug it in, it installs, and the install is actually bigger than the actual 360 game. But what it's doing is it's making the game better. It gives you, you know, upscaled 4K graphics, so you know when you play it, you actually see the difference visually. But more importantly, the cutscenes in the 360 version were 720p, and it actually downloads the 1080p versions of those videos. So when you're playing the game, you don't get the crappy FMV, you actually get the good FMV. So like right now on the Series X, Final Fantasy 13, the definitive way to play it is on the Series X until they remaster or remake it, of course. But you know, there are other games that follow that pattern and you know do the same thing, and it's interesting why they just don't leverage that more often.
Games just basically patched up their hardware, the actual software, to support the Xbox Series systems. So games like Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon would run at like 30 frames per second on a PlayStation 5 if you use the PS4 version. But the Xbox version, if you had Yakuza 7, you could literally just download, or the game would auto-patch itself depending on your hardware, and give you enhancements effectively for free. And that's something that I believe is very consumer friendly. Microsoft knows that, yes, these updates should be free, and for the most part, on a lot of older games, and even third-party stuff, you'll just get free enhancements. For backwards compatibility, even though...
Unless you're Sony, then you gotta pay up. But like I said, I don't take it for granted. I am grateful that they offer these free enhancements, but you know, people shouldn't take it for granted because at the end of the day, work has gone in, even if not directly on the games, work has gone in through other means to make sure you get that benefit. And for those games, even though games that have been remastered, right, like the Fallout series, I think it was Fallout 4 that got remastered recently. It was either 3 or 4. I think it was 4. But a lot of work went into that, and it was just a free upgrade. So you wouldn't see Sony doing that. But, you know, at the same time, the fact that it's free, I'm grateful that it's free that Microsoft do this, and, you know, people shouldn't take it for granted.
Though you have to download the games through Microsoft servers, and, you know, in my world, you should be able to run them off of disks, the emulator files that are downloaded per game, some of them actually have serious benefits. You can download games with 4K, graphics. You can download 16 times anisotropic filtering, and you can get frame rate boosts. Heck, even games like Final Fantasy 13.
No way! I haven't even seen this video, but I remember recently buying them on the 360 versions on disc form because I had like a whole collection, and when in my old place the ceiling came down, we had like workers coming in and out. We had the boxes on the side where I had all my collections and stuff, and you know the box that had all my Final Fantasy Black Label collections from the PS1 days. Someone just took it and run off of it, and I only found out that it went missing, you know, months, if not a year later, because we just got those boxes and put them back into storage. And when we were having to move, that's when I realized that it got pinched. So I went and started rebuying my Final Fantasy collection bit by bit. But that's, you know, this is why I picked up 13 again on the Xbox platform, the 360, because it was just a better experience because I haven't finished Lightning Returns. But it's amusing that he's coming up with the same things. I like it. I like it, dude. I like it. Great minds think alike.
or some would call it Final Hallway 13.
Hey, look. I was literally just right now bigging you up. Great minds think alike, and then you're just gonna go and do me dirty like that with the next thing you say. Come on, bro. You don't need to do that to me. I know you. I know deep inside you're taking it back, so I'll forgive you.
4K re-encodes of their CGI just for the Xbox Series, backwards compatibility. And all of this, by the way, is for free. So I'm not going to dog on Microsoft a lot. I think in many ways, they definitely provide more features than Sony does. But the reason why Windows is important is you get a terabyte of space on these systems. And I feel that Microsoft should bring Sony's feature back. Look, if you brought other OS, or the ability for players to split the Xbox hard drive just by opening up an application that allowed you to install Windows 11 with one click, by the way. It literally is that possible. That's how...
Dude, I've literally been saying this. I literally was talking about this not long ago in this video. Dude, I'm telling you, great minds think alike. Great minds think alike. It literally can be done with one button. It's just a script that runs and installs everything.
How VM installations work these days. Imagine installing Windows 11 for free on your Xbox system.
You could even make it part of the Xbox Game Pass sub too. That would actually be a smart move, to be fair. Because if you made it part of that, loads of people are going to want to do it because they're going to want access to the Windows portion of the gaming. But this will also mean that, by doing that, yes, it does mean that you're kind of beholden to Game Pass while using those. But the games you purchase, if you do buy them on Steam, are yours forever. So it's not like you're losing anything. You're just paying for Game Pass to gain access to the Windows portion. I think that'd be a little bit, I don't know, it'd be a bit on the nose. I can see them doing it, but I think it'll be a bit on the nose. But, it will definitely bring in a whole bunch of people onto Game Pass to do that. Because at the end of the day, you'll get access to a whole bunch of Steam games, including games like God of War Ragnarok. Because it will technically just be Windows. You've installed it on a virtual machine. A virtual machine is being installed. It's going to leverage the PC parts inside the Xbox to run it. It's just a PC at that point. You can run basically all PlayStation PC ports natively on there. They might not run at 60 FPS, and it is what it is. But they will run, and you'll be able to play them. This is the future that I've been saying that I want, right? This is, Microsoft has pivoted this way, and that's fine. But now that they've kind of gone this way, I want them to go, literally all in. And so this is their next evolution. And they can make this happen. And at that point, if you've got a partition, Valve won't care, because just basically installing it on Windows, and it's just going to run off Windows. To them, it's no different to running it on your desktop or the Xbox, because it's still Windows. You're not running it off Xbox OS. So, yeah. I've been saying this for ages, boys. I've been saying this for ages. And I've even been saying that the next Xbox is going to be in this fashion. But they could technically do that right now. They could. If they really wanted to, they could. And simply just make, once you boot into other OS, which is Windows 10 or Windows 11, probably Windows 11, you'll gain access to mouse and keyboard controls. Cool stuff.
And then basically having a gaming computer available. A gaming computer where you could download Steam, Epic Games, Ubisoft, any launcher really, or even Game Pass within Windows 11 on the Xbox itself. Dude, could you imagine how Microsoft could easily just take over that fucking entry mid-range PC gaming market? Desktops alone run you around $1,400 for relatively good hardware. Again, some of this stuff like this Ryzen 5 5500 GT, obviously this system is being sold for $650. Some systems for $900. And of course, if you look at the price of an Xbox Series X, like in Canada, $649 is kind of unbeatable values for a pretty mid-range gaming PC. A gaming PC that can run a lot of games at 60 frames and beyond. So I don't understand why Microsoft doesn't somehow leverage the fact that they're selling this hardware and obviously run their software. And of course, I've heard numerous, like counters to this. Like, Muda, why would Microsoft allow you to download other storefronts on their system? Bro, they don't give a fuck where you're actually buying.
That's the point. Everyone keeps saying, why would they do this? Why would they care? Why would they cannibalize their own sales? Dude, they're putting their games on Steam, PlayStation, on Nintendo. They don't care anymore where you play your games. All they want to do is sell you those games. You don't have to buy those games on Steam. But then there are so many games that, aren't available on any console. Or, have a partnership with, an agreement with PlayStation, and they're releasing it on PlayStation and on PC. At that point, if it's available day one on PC, and Sony has paid for that exclusive, as they call it now, because it works to their narrative, console exclusive, which they were arguing is a made-up term and doesn't really exist, and it's only an X-Boy fanboy narrative, which now they're running off with the same thing because it suits their narrative, it wouldn't matter because they can pay for it. You can still play it on your Xbox via Windows. Just like right now, you can go into your Xbox, sign up to Boosteroid, and play PC games on your Xbox. Crazy, right? Not PC games, well, PC games, of course, but those PlayStation PC ports on your Xbox. It's crazy times. Crazy times we live in. Microsoft doesn't care anymore where you play your games, but they do need a USP. And this right now is the USP. I just don't see any other way that they can actually add any real USP value to the consoles. This has to be their only card to play. And it will work.
Their games from. They conveniently sell their games on Steam and pretty much any other launcher they need to, just for people to jump in. It doesn't matter. As long as you're playing an Xbox game, maybe on the Xbox hardware, that's just a win for Microsoft. But the other thing is, they already also sell hardware in these spaces anyways, right? Like, Microsoft sells tablets, Surfaces, and at some point they actually used to sell a phone, for crying out loud, and
please bring back Windows Phone. I love that phone. Or if anyone actually knows of a way to get the Windows Phone skin on Android, because I can't find it. If you know, come to my Discord and, tell me how to do it, because I can't find anything of that kind for it. And I'd really like it, because the Windows interface on the Windows Phone is by far my favorite with any phone I've tried. I do miss my Windows Phone.
While that necessarily didn't survive, Xbox could easily be one of the easiest and cheapest option, one of the friendliest options. I shouldn't say cheapest. One of the friendliest options for people to get into like PC gaming, right? Like, if you want to get an entry mid-level gaming computer, especially for people that want to just even touch this, or people that already own Xboxes, Microsoft could easily just destroy and corner this market right now if they provided this functionality. Just imagine being able to turn your Xbox into a full-on gaming PC where you could play games like Valorant, games like Rainbow Six Siege, games like Call of Duty Warzone, which are available on the Xbox, but you can play the PC versions of them with your friends.
Don't forget, right? Don't forget that Windows OS would run PC games off the SSD. You could go buy an external SSD, plug it into the USB port, and it would run those games. It's not like the Series X, which requires a proprietary memory card. These games would actually run off the SSD because they are designed to run off the SSD. Not like the Series X games, which are designed to run off the proprietary internal memory. So that's actually great as well. So for those of you that, like me, who are struggling with memory on the Series X constantly, this just makes it cheaper to have additional memory, which is great.
All without the hassle of going out and building your own computer or, figuring out which pre-built system to buy.
This is another point, right? It's a super easy way to get you into PC gaming as well. A lot of people have this taboo about drivers and all this and all that and problems, and apparently people spend 4 hours in their settings before they can actually even get into the game. That's all a myth, but this would actually bridge that gap. They could really, really do something special here and actually get more and more people, through that taboo, through that mindset. And who knows, maybe they'll eventually become PC gamers, but they'll still have that PC in their Xbox. And then this really will become, this is an Xbox.
Xbox could easily dominate this market, and I don't understand why they haven't done this already. The more doom and gloom I read, the more I realize that if these guys want to survive, they have to have some exclusive gimmick. And if they're not selling exclusive games, then Microsoft, as a fucking technology company that produces one of the most used operating systems in the world right now, I don't understand why they don't provide this to some capacity for Xbox users. You know, there's a way for people to run emulators on an Xbox through something known as developer mode, which I've shown in the past.
There is. You pay, I think, like $20 and you can set your Xbox to developer mode. There's a little bit of work to go through it with like a form filling in. Nothing serious. It takes the best part of like, I think, 20 minutes to set everything up. And it basically switches, you know, when you cycle your Xbox on, it basically switches between developer mode and non-developer mode. And, you know, people have been running emulators on their Series consoles for quite some time. As you can see, SOCOM is running on the Series X.
And through developer mode, you can install RetroArch, and then underneath RetroArch, you can install DOSBox, which allows users to install Windows 98 and get some basic PC gaming underneath their Xbox.
I mean, this on its own proves that it's actually possible. The fact that they're installing Windows 98 on the hard drive and it's working, even though it is basic, this just shows you that should Microsoft actually want to do it, they can. And why they haven't is beyond me.
Well, retro PC gaming, so to speak. And again, may I remind you, I don't understand why Microsoft just doesn't allow people to actually have Windows 11 as a functional operating system alongside your standard Xbox stuff. You know, I would absolutely start using my Xbox as sort of like a sandboxed gaming PC to play a lot of kernel-level anti-cheat video games on an actual separate PC if Microsoft provided the opportunity. I mean, to think about the fact that you're getting a gaming PC, 650 Canadian, with like a terabyte SSD, a good SSD, you've got a pretty decent GPU, decent CPU, and 16 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, it really is a good entry to mid-level gaming PC. And I don't understand why Microsoft doesn't choose to capitalize on it. It really makes no sense from any perspective. So yeah, I have an actual plan on how to fix Microsoft's woes. Whether they take this advice and go on forward and actually give, you know, that one exclusive bit of value to their user base.
That's the thing. And, you know, he's hit the nail on the head. You need to provide incentives. If you don't have exclusives, because exclusives sell platforms, it's really that simple. When you think of Nintendo, you think of games like Zelda, Mario, Pokemon, and if you want to play these games, you have to go to Nintendo if you're not emulating and essentially, you know, doing piracy. If you want to play the Uncharted, The Last of Us, the Astro Bots, you have to go to Sony. If you want to play the Halos, the Gears, you can go to PC, you can go to Xbox. If you want to play Forza Horizon 5, you can now go to PlayStation, Xbox, or PC. The USP isn't there. But adding Steam onto it, well, the Windows 11 as a native install, that's a really nice USP. Because that opens you up to a plethora of games. And yes, it also means that some publishers are going to get super lazy because you can do that and not release games natively on Xbox. But it doesn't matter to you as a consumer because you've got access to those games and you can play them. And that should be the only important thing here that matters. And that is why something like this, being the USP, is so important. And then Microsoft need it. They need something. So maybe this thing that Sarah Bond was talking about, the greatest generational leap, maybe this is roughly what she's talking about. Who knows? But why they haven't acted on this and even tried to implement it for the Series X console, probably not the S, but the X at least, is beyond me. And I think they absolutely should. They should definitely look at doing something like this.
Because I really do want to ask a question to you guys, all right? People who, you know, don't take the console war to heart, you guys buy a product that is based on its own merits. Mm-hmm. Would you actually consider switching over to Xbox if they allowed gaming PC usage? Just think about it for a second. You know, even games from PlayStation that are being ported to, again, PC, literally a year after their PS5 releases. Just imagine,
And I mean, they're a year now, but that date is going to get slower and lower and lower. And we're seeing a bunch of first party games coming out day and date as well. So it's not even a case of it being a year anymore. So that is going to get eroded more and more over time.
Spider-Man 2 just released on PC. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth just released on PC. Games that are, as of right now, exclusive to the PlayStation console. If Microsoft
Console exclusive, the term that they say doesn't exist,
gave you the option to install Windows 11 alongside the actual, console version of their OS, you could literally right now install Spider-Man 2. You can install God of War Ragnarok. You can install maybe Days Gone Remastered when it comes out on PC. You could install Final Fantasy Rebirth and play all of those games on an actual Xbox system way before any of these companies are going to bring it natively onto the device. And I don't understand why Microsoft, again, doesn't do it. It doesn't seem like they legally are beholden to this.
And the other thing is, companies like Square Enix and, Capcom and whatnot, they would actually really like, if they were doing like an exclusive deal with Sony, they would actually really love this approach. Because it would mean, obviously they'd need to optimize it to make sure if Microsoft did take this approach that games would, be supported by it, because it's going to be not just a throwaway feature, but an actual feature. But it does mean that for them, there's just a greater return of interest, because they now, instead of having to make a series, well, I guess they'll still need to make it for the Series S. Yeah, that wouldn't work. The parity clause on that would still mean that they'd need to provide a less of, a version of it. So ignore what I said there. But if the Series S wasn't there, then this would change things up quite dramatically.
Again, it wouldn't even piss off OEMs because they're literally in the actual hardware space already. Xbox would just be another lineup of hardware they've already released into the market. And again, I don't think it's going to piss off even game publishers or game developers, because again, you are literally allowing people to install the PC versions of these games, the PC licenses, so legally speaking, it should all effectively be kosher. And again, these are all, if I was running Xbox, like actually running it right now, this would be something that I would make a priority. Because again,
I agree. And how long have I been saying this? How long have I been saying this? Forever.
I want to sell hardware. But in order to sell the hardware, in order to make the Xbox brand as competitive as Sony really needs to have in the market for competition's sake, I would just lay all my cards out on the table. I would do the one thing that nobody else in my space can do, and that is provide an actual real bit of value, in that I give you the most powerful console available, and I also give you one of the most accessible avenues into PC gaming to begin with. Even though I'm somebody that loves Linux and I don't touch Microsoft Windows, I can...
How dare you?
Not, again, exaggerate enough or explain enough the value Microsoft could provide to entry-level PC gamers if they just decided to turn Xbox into one of the most open, friendly platforms in this regard. It would also make the Xbox a pretty good system for people who want to do things like, development. Like, imagine being able to actually develop your own games on the same console you're aiming for.
I mean, not only that, right? But like for people who are going to college or to university, where they would, instead of taking, I mean, most people will take like a Chromebook or a laptop, but they might want like a PC there as well. This would actually be like a 2-in-1. So it would actually work really nicely. There's a lot of use cases for this and a lot of reasons why this would be appealing on a much more broader scale. But why isn't, and the question is, why is Microsoft not taking this? Surely someone at Microsoft must have come up with this idea some time ago. And maybe this is what they're working towards in their super slow, snail-paced way. But why has no one there really thought about this if they haven't? it's crazy when you think about it, because this is like an easy win for them. I've been saying this for ages. It's an easy win. And when Destin asked, Phil Spencer, Steam confirmed, and he laughed, I want to believe that this is the approach that they're going down, and this is the plan. Because if it is, this will change the landscape of Xbox entirely. Like, absolutely, just through and through.
Imagine being able to do content creation on an actual Xbox platform through the PC mode. Again, just throwing this idea out there. I know that I yap a fair bit about this, but I really had to explain and give you the history of how possible this is, how it's happened. And again, I want to counter a lot of the negative points that would be raised about this topic. It's doable, it's easily done, in my opinion. And again, I feel like Phil Spencer should make this shit an absolute priority. It would give Xbox that one super big needed advantage. And it would actually, for the first time, I would say, in the world of consoles, really shake shit up. This would be like Nintendo Switch levels of shaking things up. Let me know what you think. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. I am out.
I think this is a great video. It's something that I've been saying for a long time, and I think this is the real only approach that Microsoft has right now. Selling their next console is going to have its difficulties. They've got no USP, they've got no exclusives, and sure, they've never said that, like Avowed came out on Xbox right now. Will it come to PlayStation? Will it not come to PlayStation? We don't know, but going forward, they're going to list all the games that are going to get a PlayStation port. My assumption is pretty much on the, in line with what Jez said. It will be based on whether those studios have the capacity to actually push out something like this to multi-platform. We've seen id Software does have that capability. Other studios might not, like the South of Midnight studio or Obsidian. They're just not at that scale to be able to produce multi-versions of games. They've already provided two with PC and Xbox. Well, 3 if you count the Series S. Adding any more is just too taxing on development time. It will delay the project even more. So I think there's that, and we'll maybe get a few games that don't go based on those reasons, but there's no real exclusives there guaranteed anymore, especially with the whole red line, statement. So this would be their number one trump card as a USP to go ahead. And I've been saying this for ages now. And it's good to see that I'm not the only one thinking like this, and I'm not the only one with this mindset. Microsoft doesn't give two rats where you buy your games anymore. I know I see arguments and discussions happening all the time, be it in my Discord or be it in social media, where people are still kind of clinging on to that old Xbox. They just don't care anymore. What they care about is selling the games, and if you're and looking after those people that are on Game Pass. And they want to grow Game Pass. That is, the primary focus. They want to grow Game Pass. They're not going to stop making consoles because the console is a primary conduit of, selling Game Pass. But if they could add a unique feature to that console that's like a killer feature by adding Windows to it, they will sell more consoles. And by virtue, sell more Game Pass subscriptions. And if they go down that kind of shady route of tying Windows to Game Pass, that's going to sell even more. Because you're kind of paying for Game Pass, you're going to get all those cool games on Xbox day one, but you're also getting Steam as well with the Windows install. So it kind of pays hand in hand with it in itself. This would also stop, other things going on. But I think this was a great video. Thanks so much for recommending it. Mutar, great video. I didn't like your slander for Final Fantasy 13, but otherwise, fantastic video. Really, really summarized everything I've been saying and thinking for a long time. Alright folks, thanks so much for watching. I know this video has hit pretty much an hour, but I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have made it this far, leave a comment below saying I made it to the end, because I'd love to see, all of you make it to the end point. I know this is a long video, but if you have enjoyed it, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to stay up to date of all content I release, and I will see you in the next one. As always, remain legend.